Hello, this is Bill Dixon, President of North Carolina Vietnam Veterans. My co-host Bob Matthews and I will be bringing you the Lessons of Vietnam show tonight. Bob, I call him the educational czar. He was 40 years old. No, he was 40 years teaching school. And
I'll take 40 years old.
40 years old. Okay, well, you
that.
have to take it. 40 years teaching school. He started a course called the Lessons of Vietnam at Enloe High School, which is now gone worldwide, I guess. We're in about 1,000 schools nationwide. We're in Vietnam. And wherever you'd like for us to be, just touch base with us. Let us know where you'd like the course to be, and we'll put the course in there if you give us some help and so forth. We're getting ready to expand in probably Johnson County and Wilson County and Alamance County this coming school year. So just touch base with us, and we got a lot of things to talk about tonight. And one of the things that Bob and I were interviewed Saturday by a young lady by the name of Pam Salisbury, Channel 17 News. She wanted to know what a Vietnam veteran's opinion was on the Bo Bergdahl situation. And so Bob and I are going to talk to you a little bit about tonight about our version of what we feel about Bo Bergdahl's situation. We don't necessarily always agree, and what we are going to talk about is not something that necessarily all Vietnam veterans or members of North Carolina Vietnam veterans think. That's one of the nice things of why we fought a war, so we could all disagree and agree to disagree and talk it out and have a good time. So if you got to want to put a word in, just call us at 919-518-9773 and put your 50 cents in. It's inflation. It's no longer 2 cents worth. And now it's 50 cents, but and it's worth more than that. So call us in, tell us what you think. Bob, we're going to start out with this whole Bergdahl situation is kind of going crazy. It's viral. It's just
exactly
going.
Right.
It's going all over the world, and nobody seems to know what's going on, but everybody's got an opinion.
Right.
It's kind of like that thing you sit on. Everybody's got one just about, but it's not necessarily worth anything.
Well, you know, Bill, the thing about the interview Saturdays when Pam Salisbury asked me, "What do you think of the Bo Bergdahl situation?" I don't have an hour. I have 100 million thoughts about Bo Bergdahl. I have wore his bracelet for 5 years. I have been hoping and praying that this young man comes home safely. And then, as you said before, it became viral. There were rumor after half fact. There's rush to judgment, all the terms you want to use in history. I have some comparisons. And as you mentioned before, I taught school for so many years that we always warned the students about this. One of the most beautiful things about America is you have the right to have an opinion. But you certainly also have a responsibility to do your research and have the facts. I don't think you can have one without the other. My personal opinion, I don't know. I want to have this young man, Sergeant Bergdahl, as it is now. Most people have been reading about Bo every day, know that he's been promoted in absentia from PFC to a E5, a Sergeant E5. I'm waiting for this young man to get medical clearance and get in front of a microphone. And I challenge our listeners tonight, and I hope you will call in tonight, but I challenge you to put yourself in a seat in that audience with Mr. Bo Bergdahl addressing the media and ask a question. But please listen for the answer. It's something we have a tendency not to do. We're all members of the Yabbitt Club. Let this man answer your questions. We'll pose some to you tonight. But I want to give you a point of reference before I go back to Bill for a minute. Recall, if you will, this program is called The Lessons of Vietnam. And one of the lessons of Vietnam we learned was to always tell the truth. A basic bedrock of this course is to tell the truth, answer all of the questions. If you do not know the answer, say, "I don't know," call timeout, and find the answer, and bring it back to the students. recall the rush to judgment at the famous 1996 Atlanta Games, the Olympic Games. I happened to be at the Games as a guest because of the lessons of Vietnam. The bombing when we crucified Richard Jewell in the media ruined his life, and he didn't do it. But we thought he did. Ended up being Eric Rudolph. I'm giving you a history lesson tonight. But we need a lesson. We need something to hang our hat on. Do not rush to judgment. Opinions are easy. Facts are hard to swallow. Let things play themselves out. Mr. Dixon.
Well, you and I have been working on the prisoner of war issue for many, many years. As we state the first Saturday every month when we do our POW ceremony, for over the last 27 years we've been doing it. There's a lot of facts and misfacts out there, a lot of misstatements, and we've had several POWs, former POWs on the show and getting their points of view and so forth. You and I traveled all over every place, all over the country, giving out Bo bracelets and talking about Bo being a POW. And there was always that rumor that he had possibly been a deserter.
Yes.
But it just seemed to have got a life of its own since he has been released. And I'm not certain whether it's how important that is right now, if he was or wasn't right now. I think the biggest thing is we were supposedly have negotiated with terrorists, which I think is wrong. But at the same time, it's not the first time. We didn't set a precedent this time. It wasn't the first time we have negotiated with terrorists. Maybe not with five. In the situation, the five that we gave up, but there's a lot of it's just amazing to me just how he has grown. I mean, as a POW, I feel like we deserve to or our responsibility, and he deserved the right to come home. From what I understand, from what I have read about it, he did try to escape at least twice.
Well, Bill, a couple of things too about you mentioned about the history of the POW issue. It has always been turbulent. Whether it's Bo Bergdahl, whether it's Bill Schuette, whether it's the men we've talked about, Norman Gaddis, all the POW issues, there's always been this conspiracy theory that there's a cover-up.
Remember the guy that came home? I'm having a senior moment. The guy that came home, Garwood.
Oh yes,
he came home after all the things about him. He didn't get. I mean, he was fairly came right out and basically admitted that he collaborated, but he wasn't crucified the way Bo has been crucified.
You could list in history. I mentioned Richard Jewell in Atlanta. You could mention Garwood. You could mention Bill Kelly. You could mention, as soon as we get a tidbit of a fact, we make our judgment. So what I did is I tried to get someone with a better opinion than mine, and I called my good friend Bill Schuette, who was a POW in the Hanoi Hilton for 7.5 years. And I asked Bill what he thought of the Bo Bergdahl situation. And Bill said, well, Bob, I'm going to tell you point blank. You're going to use my name on the air, aren't you? I said, yes, I am, as a reference point. He said, I don't know, Bob. I don't mean to skirt the issue. Let the facts play themselves out. When I came home from being in the Hanoi Hilton, some people wanted to hear about what I had to say, some did not. In this case, I think everybody in America wants to listen to Mr. Bergdahl at a press conference and say, Bo, what happened? We can live with the truth. We always have. But do not judge this young man by what you want to be the truth. If he walked away, he walked away. We'll deal with that. If he was captured and humiliated and tortured, we will deal with that. We will help him heal. We will make him better. If he doesn't like America anymore, he has the right to leave. We, as American citizens, have always had the right, innocent to proven guilty. It used to be beyond a shadow of a doubt, but you can't escape shadows. So now it's reasonable doubt. We have a lot of questions, and what I said earlier in the show, think about being in the audience and maybe you're thinking about calling our show tonight, I want you to do that. What would you ask Bo? Who would you have in the audience? It's a tough question. By no means tonight do we attempt to solve it, but we are going to open a can of worms, and we are going to go fishing. We have to find out.
Well, Bob, the military is well known for two things: bitching and rumors.
Exactly.
If you can't moan and complain and bitch about everything in the world under the sun, as far as the weather, your duty, what the general said, how it should have been done, what your idea of that particular patrol or mission should have been, something wrong.
Right.
Then you know. In fact, I think some famous general said something about if the soldiers won't bitching and moaning, then they had a problem.
Well, the most recent thing that came up, and it seems like something comes up every day, and this puzzle is becoming like a light bulb on the ground. It's splintered in 1,000 directions. Now people are starting to criticize Mr. Bergdahl's past. At least they're looking at his past more closely and say, well, didn't you know? What's wrong with you?
You mean the newest news today that he was the Coast Guard thing when he was discharged because of proposedly mental instability?
And they said, well, what happened here? And they said, well, most of the soldiers I've talked to, all of the military, have gone through what's called basic training. We know it's hard on everybody. You're far from home. One of the biggest problems is loneliness. A lot of guys wash out after 2 or 3 weeks. It's not a scar for life. It's not meant for everyone. Once you find out the facts, they are the facts. You go from there. You talk to the person, what happened, let them tell you what happened. You talk to maybe his parents. The Bergdahls are becoming a presence nationwide. In fact, the one thing I did read today is there even have been some email threats against them.
I think against the family have been threats, as well as people who've supported Bo Bergdahl. And again, with supporting of Bo Bergdahl, they were supporting a POW.
Yes.
They were not supporting a deserter. They were not supporting someone with a mental problem or whatever, alleged mental problem. They were supporting an American POW, and that's what we did. We supported American POW, and looking back, even today with the situation like it is, I think I'd still push for Bo Bergdahl, American POW, to bring him home. Maybe not necessarily the way we did it, but then that's hindsight, and that's above my pay grade, as they say.
Yeah.
The thing that we talked about a while ago about the rumors, quite often, as in the military, been in Vietnam and so forth, the rumor of the day, something could happen, and the rumor would start out, and next thing you know, it was almost like it had a life of its own. And I'm not saying anything against the guys, the fellow soldiers who spoke out against Bergdahl. He was a loner. He had some opinions that was not particularly popular opinions. He made some statements he probably shouldn't have made, but at the same time, emotional. He was very interested in the Afghan people. He didn't think America was treating them necessarily well. Being in Vietnam, we necessarily didn't always treat our Vietnamese allies maybe they should. We called them gooks and everything else. The good guys are bad guys, and we just, you got young guys out there, and they have their own way of looking at things. They don't have the experience.
Well, let's pause there for a moment,
okay.
And let's take what you just said and compare that to why we went to Vietnam and put in a playground for the Vietnamese children, and why we connected the American students with the Vietnamese. We had an empathy for that country. We went there to fight for their freedom, and we didn't find their freedom. And we didn't like what we saw. So Mr. Bergdahl says, I don't like what's going on in Afghanistan. The people there, I feel sorry for them. I want to make it better for them. Don't condemn him for having emotions and feelings. Now, if you talk to his fellow soldiers, which you just mentioned, that is usually a good measuring stick of a man's character.
But let me just bring right there up. One of the reasons that My Lai happened in Vietnam because of lack of leadership.
Yes.
All the way from the top right on down to the bottom. It was a disaster. It was somewhat we would call like the movie The Perfect Storm.
Exactly.
I think Bo Bergdahl's situation is also one of those perfect storms.
It's a good analogy. There was a rush to judgment for Mr. Bill Calley, and most of you know the history of My Lai, and you know the history of this course, Lessons of Vietnam, where we investigated My Lai tremendously. We've gone to My Lai. We have talked to people that have written books on My Lai. We have talked to Bill Calley. We've talked to Ernest Medina. We've talked to all the people in the chain of command that were indirectly or directly responsible for this rush to judgment. Bill Calley was court-martialed. He was convicted. He was put under house arrest. But most people then lost interest in the story. Ernest Medina, who was his commanding officer and gave the order, was never even questioned. Calley was in house arrest for 11 months, pardoned by Richard Nixon, now owns a jewelry store in Atlanta, Georgia. I've talked to him twice. Bill Calley now is selling his story for $10,000 per interview. NCBVI is not interested. We don't have that kind of budget. But it was a rush to judgment. It's a good analogy, Bill, in history. But my point is, when you go and you uncover every rock, you talk to people who served with him, you talk to high school people, you talk to his commanding officers, you talk to his ex-girlfriends, you talk to everyone, you're slowly putting this puzzle together. But let's not put it together before we have all the pieces.
Yeah. Well, you put it together, but also you have to put in the human part. Other people that you talk to, they have their own way of thinking, and it may necessarily what they're feeling is also maybe their opinion, but not necessarily worked on the facts. Sometimes when you are questioning them, that's one of the things that we have to try to filter in is their personal involvement and their opinions, sure, as well as the facts. It is a fact that the leadership that at his unit was problematic. Before he, you have to excuse me, I'm trying to learn how to not go every time I say something, but I'm getting better. Just call in and tell me when I'm doing it so that I know that I can help me quit. 919-518-9773. And tell me when I go there we just did it again. Okay. I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
Well, Bill, also, I think a factor that we should talk about a little bit tonight is the wonderful, wonderful media. We have access today to instantaneous news. Something happens in Florida, we know in seconds. There's almost a feeding frenzy today. Who gets the first story? Who gets the scoop? We have breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Every channel is looking for a scoop.
You mean the talking heads who get up there and they're trying to sell a product, because if they don't sell themselves, people quit tuning in, and then they get less ratings, and that means less commercials. So they've got to sensationalize. Yeah.
I have another.
That's a better, easier word for you to say.
I have another historical analogy.
Right.
I think I recall one of the darkest days in U.S. history was the assassination of John Kennedy, and within 2 months, the Warren Report was written. It's about this thick. I have a copy of it in my home. There are probably 500 errors in that book. It was a rush to judgment. Let's find out what happened. Let's get Oswald, trace it all back, and let's get it over with because we're late for dinner. It was a rush to judgment again. I'm not saying he didn't do it, but I'm saying slow down. This is just 3 weeks old. We may have egg on our face. If you do, you can wash your face. But let's wait till Bo gets home in Texas, and that's coming very soon, where he will face the military, he will face his accusers, he will face his loved ones. Bo's home. Let's let him tell his story, and then we'll judge him from there.
Well, Bob, a lot of people are judging his father.
Yes, they are.
His father, once Bo was captured or deserted or whichever case may be, the father got busy, did research. He learned the language of the people who had got him. He was trying to he was trying to get in somewhat in their mind so that if the situation, he could go talk to him or ask him to release his son or whatever. And he seems to have gotten a lot of criticism because he goes so wrapped up in learning the language of the people. But he was trying to, for what I feel, he was trying to have their thought patterns so that he'd know better what his son was going through. He was totally immersed in getting his son out. That's the reason he learned the language. He learned about their way of life and their thought patterns. And he's gotten a lot of negative
he certainly has.
from immersing himself into his son's
Bill,
situation.
I also think the Bergdahls aren't sure what they're getting back. Bo left as a young man. He's gone 5 years. Mr. Bergdahl has also been criticized for his looks, for the beard he grew, for learning the language.
Well, the beard he grew, he stated publicly that he was going to grow his beard until Bo came home. Has got nothing to do with the Muslim religion or anything else. It was a statement he made that he was going to let his beard grow. But everybody looks at it. It was something to do with a Muslim beard or Taliban beard.
Right. As the rumors abound, we have to take stock in the fact that we are not a dumb people. We're intelligent, I think. We can filter through things. If a man grows a beard, it looks like maybe he shouldn't. So what? Let it go. Someone told me if Bo was my son, I would go to Germany and I would demand to see him immediately. But the military says, wait a minute. Part of the learning process and healing process is for Bo not to get an emotional roller coaster. Bring him out of this funk he was in slowly. Let him see his parents when he's ready. I know they're ready, but maybe he's not ready, psychologically or emotionally. Because you want to find out from a lucid Bo Bergdahl who's healthy, who's nourished properly, and can sit down and talk to you in a calm voice and tell you what the last 5 years was like. It may be a story that we'll be surprised to hear, but it certainly is a story that we need to hear.
You know, like anybody else, we need to give him his day in court.
Sure.
Let the politicians and the army or whoever wants to get up and question him, but don't make it a circus. Make it there I go again.
Well, everybody's weighed in.
Yeah.
From John McCain's weighed in, John Kerry's weighed in, Hillary Clinton's weighed in, Ollie North has weighed in. All the heavy hitters have weighed in. Well, that's fine. Let them weigh in. We want everyone to have an opinion. No one has facts. One man has the facts. Mr. Bergdahl.
Yes. You know, we've, as you know, I'm not a particular backer or supporter of the present regime at all.
No.
He has, but on several occasions, he has opened his mouth before he heard the truth. I remember the situation with a black and white crime that was automatically that the policemen were in fault, and
yes.
Before he got all the facts, he ended up asking them to come in for a beer to talk about it. And he has on several occasions, and now the American people are doing the same thing. They're jumping to a conclusion. Not all of them. I mean, I hate to throw everybody in there, but not everybody. If you look on the Facebook and so forth, this information that comes out on Facebook, it's constantly, automatically thinking I'm him a deserter. Let's find out first if he was a deserter or if he was disillusioned and in the process got captured, or just how he got in the hands of the well, actually it wasn't the Taliban, it was another organization that was tied in with the Taliban, but probably worse than the Taliban. How he got in that situation, and then we look at whether he's a prisoner or misunderstood, or if his emotional problem had something to do with it. Ask yourself this out there, audience: if his emotional problem that he was purported to have, does that excuse his situation if he deserted? If he deserted, the fact that he was disillusioned the way the government was being handled. I'm not saying it was handled right or wrong. Is that a reason for us to write him off?
Well, Bill, we have a very learned audience. We have asked fellow soldiers, fellow servicemen and women. We have talked to everybody we can, the laymen, everyone about what they think. And everyone has an opinion because this is 2014. We have access to so much information to make our minds up. And sometimes you can have an opinion and you can be in the majority and you're still wrong. You have to let things play out. I am waiting, not with bated breath, but this will run its course in about 3 weeks, like most things do. Bo will be home. Things will happen. Now, whatever happens to Bo, as you mentioned, is Bo a deserter, a prisoner, or a political pawn? He might be all of them. We don't know. Yeah. He could be one of many, or it could be all of them.
You know, there's been a lot of question out there that this was a ploy to, because you haven't heard a whole lot about the VA scandal lately because of Bo. You haven't heard a whole lot about Benghazi. Right. A lot of things that all of a sudden have been on the back burner because of Bo. And right now, I think one of the most important things to a veteran and to those who are serving today is getting the VA straightened out. Trying to get in to see a VA doctor, has always been a challenge. If you remember now, with Obamacare is coming along, that's also government run, just like the VA.
Right.
If we solve the problems through the VA, maybe we can head off some of the problems that's going to be with Obamacare. You know, we've talked a whole lot about Bo and so forth, but it all comes down to, I saw a thing today, the guy who was somewhat of an idiot says that we ought to do away with the POW flag now because Bo's home.
Oh, no.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but there's a lot more POWs, MIAs out there right now than Bo.
Well, Bill, you know, we talked before about the title of this show, Lessons of Vietnam. And one of the most crucial issues we've talked about for years is if you're ever captured, if you're ever missing in action, if you're ever a POW, you have a background of support for this nation. That symbol, that flag, may be the most recognized symbol other than the American flag in the world. Don't do away with anything like that. Don't rush to judgment. Wait.
Well, you know, World War II, we left about 70,000.
Yes.
Korea, we left about almost 10,000. And in Vietnam, we left about 2,000. And that flag has got to the point to people have seen that flag now. It's kept the POW issue out there.
Yes, it has.
And now this country is not going to walk off and write off 70,000 men just in the war because the POW issues out there. That flag is a symbol, not just Vietnam, but all POWs. And as long as that flag is flown, it keeps in mind that we do send men in harm's way.
Yes, we do.
And one of the contracts we have with those men we send in harm's way, they sent us there in harm's way when we went to Vietnam, is that our government and the people of this country will support us and do everything possible to bring us home, whether it's alive or dead, so that the family, even if we're dead, that the family will have some closure.
Exactly.
That is a commitment. That's somewhat of a unwritten commitment, but it's something we all understand, just like the VA health care.
Now, when the Bo Bergdahl issue ends and it's over and we have all the answers, the POW MIA issue will remain vibrant and strong in our curriculum and our discussions forever. It's part of America. We always say, love your country and live with pride. That's part of it. And we'll serve our country for a long time. Bo Bergdahl's issue is a large bump in the road, but it's not the only bump on the road.
Yes, and as you go through your day, give Bo his day in court, give his family their. I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever why you would threaten his family and those supporters. We supported him as a POW. Our guest tonight is Monica Cash. She was on this show some time ago talking about the POWs themselves, and she was very big in getting POW Bo Bergdahl home.
Yes, she was.
But it was Bo Bergdahl, the POW, just like all of us have been trying to get a POW home.
Well, Bill, Monica Cash has worked for the POW issue for years.
Yes.
Not just Bo Bergdahl.
Well, she's very involved with that the ride home where
Yes.
they take POWs down to Andersonville for the thing down there, which I hope she'll talk about tonight because the time is coming up.
Okay.
She's been working quite a bit with. I saw her on TV. I see her. I don't know when she's ever home. I saw her on television the other day where she was with the D-Day
Yeah. In Bedford.
veterans. She was at the went with them and
She's
so
a movie
forth.
star.
Yes, she's going to be wherever there's a camera. You're going to find Monica Cash talking about veterans issues and so forth.
And Monica Cash went to Vietnam recently.
I understand that she went to Vietnam and it had something to do with building a playground.
I believe she did.
She did.
The issue, lessons of Vietnam never ends.
Well, we're going to. I've got something I want you to look at. A PowerPoint I put together. This has got nothing whatsoever to do with NCVI's opinion. This is strictly my opinion and questions. I'm going to ask you to look it over. You're not going to have time to read it because there's a lot of writing on it. But I am going to ask our producer, our everything, Mr. Amnon Nissan, who does everything. He is our producer, director, coordinator, father figure, because he gets us for not doing things right.
Yeah, he yells at me
he's
every
going
week.
to post it on the website so that you can go back and see this part. But when we come back, I'm going to have Bob and Monica are going to be visiting the POW situation as it is and what's coming up for POWs and so forth.
Very much so.
Again, on this coming first Saturday coming up, we'll be doing our ceremony downtown, which happens to be July 5th. We will be downtown on July 4th at the Capitol ground with the wall. Our computer printout so we can give you digital rubbings. We will have the panel, all the 41 missing from North Carolina still, with showing who they are and their stories and where they're from. We'll be in Wilson on July 12th, I believe it is, with the wall down there for a veterans function they're going to have there. June 14th is Flag Day. Be sure to be flying your flag, American flag, and be proud of the country you're in. And now, Mr. Producer, Director, Monitor, would you start our series? Monica, it's your turn.
Good evening and welcome back to the show. As Bill mentioned before, my name is Bob Matthews. I'm the retired teacher that has something to do with writing the course called Lessons of Vietnam. And our special guest tonight for the second half of the show is the aforementioned Monica Cash. Monica, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
And welcome back from Vietnam.
Thank you. Happy to be here and happy to have air conditioning and ice in my drinks.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot. We're so glad you went with us. But the issue at hand, obviously, is the POW issue nationwide. And the Bo Bergdahl issue, of course, is all the news every night, CNN, every article, everybody's got an opinion. And this young lady sitting next to me has been a forerunner for not only the POW families, but for the Bergdahl family and for Bo, for bringing home our POW from Afghanistan home. And it's happened. So, Monica, let's start out with your comment first of your tireless work on bringing Bo home. I know you're not sorry for any of it. I know you've gone through a lot the last 2 weeks. A lot of criticism, maybe a lot of heartache. Would you mind sharing a little bit with us tonight?
Well, it's rather interesting, the rush to judgment, the people listening to the sensationalism of the news. I'm so glad that you brought up the Atlanta bombing because I was going to bring that up. We ruined a man's life. Well, we didn't. The news did. And now they appear to be doing the same thing to Bo. He hasn't even been given his chance to tell his side of the story, what happened to him. I'm not making a judgment one way or another,
Sure.
but I do believe that he has a chance to tell his story, and it's up to the Army to decide what they want to do.
Sure. Well, Monica, the one thing that I think I always try to stress in teaching Vietnam and teaching about America is that most of us are spectators to something that we read about. Very few people that we know were or are POWs.
Right.
We don't know what they go through. We think we do, but it was so enlightening for me several years ago to meet Norman Gaddis and to meet Bill Schuette and to sit across from dinner with Bill Schuette one night and talk about 7 years in Hanoi Hilton. I felt like I was a freshman in college. And here's Bill Schuette, like a professor, telling me things that I needed to know and filling a hole in the course, Lessons of Vietnam, and filling it. And then we get to the issue of the POWs, and you look at your audience, and they have so many questions, there's not enough time. And you've worked for this with the ride home in years. Can't you tell the good you're doing for these people?
Well, something I want to talk about, first of all,
Sure.
is, what a lot of people don't realize is this rush to judgment that Bo's receiving is nothing new. We learned by the time our Vietnam POWs came home. Why did we learn? Because the World War II POWs and the Korean POWs were treated so poorly when they came home that they said, this isn't going to happen. And our Vietnam POWs were welcome home.
Yes, they were.
Korea and World War II, these POWs were brought home at night, not into big ports, into small ports.
Right.
You never talked about the fact that you had been held as a prisoner of war. If you did, people would call you all kinds of names.
Chicken.
It could lead chicken.
Well, God told me they called them chicken once.
What's wrong with you? Why didn't you fight? I would have never allowed myself to be captured. I would have fought to the death.
Yeah.
And I love to tell the story of a gentleman, Lee Jenks.
Sure.
He was shot out of a B-17 bomber. His legs were shot up, and the plane was falling, and his best friend slapped a parachute on him and threw him out the door of the airplane. He says, Lee, whatever you do when you get down on the ground, don't land on your feet. And, and so Lee says he's parachuting down. His legs are busted up. And he looks down. Here are 6 Germans with guns aimed at him. Well, how are you going to fight? How are you going to fight that? But he also loves to tell the story that he was traded for 18 Germans. He said, I was worth 18 Germans when I was traded.
It's interesting.
And here's another story. This is World War II. He was traded before the end of hostilities.
There you go.
So that we're not on new territory, and if people know their history, I was asked this morning on a radio talk show, well, we gave money for Bo. This is also nothing new. We've been doing this through all of our wars.
Well, Monica, one of the arguments recently has been that we don't deal with terrorists. Well, we might not trade openly with terrorists, but we've always dealt with them. And if you'd like to call us, please, 919-518-9773. Have a comment about Bo, about the POWs, talk to myself or Monica, because there's been so much done. And you make a point about World War II. When several years ago, Bill and I were working with Freedom Park doing interviews, and I had the privilege to interview a man named Bob Shrum, who has passed away, was a Bataan Death March survivor. Well, Bob is sitting in his interview in Cary here. He's telling me his story about how he survived the Bataan Death March. He didn't even know he was entitled to a POW medal because he was never told. So with a little bit of paperwork, Bill and I sent a few things to St. Louis. Within 3 weeks, his POW medal was mailed to him, engraved on the back. The wonderful man, Bob Shrum, passed away. It was given to his sister and put in his shadow box. But Monica's point is well taken. If you serve your country and you get in harm's way and you become a POW or an MIA, we've all been to the wall in Washington, D.C. We've all seen Saving Private Ryan. You have to understand these men and women gave everything for this country. The least we can do is give them their day in court. You'll have your time for judgment, but it's now time for facts, asking the right questions, and please listen for the answer.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. You know, it's difficult. We don't know the true story with Bo. And the story that came out today does raise a lot more questions as to should the Army have taken him in.
It does raise some questions. You're right.
You know, at that time, the standards had been lowered because the Army couldn't meet their quota. Was he in the Coast Guard? I don't know. I made some phone calls today. I haven't gotten a definitive answer on that. I got an email from someone who said, "Oh, that's just propaganda. They're trying to make an excuse for him." I find that hard to believe. It'd be too easy to fact check.
Yes. Well, you know, the thing is, I was anyway, Bill was too, a product of the draft years ago. And then we went to the volunteer Army. Then the Army went to actually rejecting people, screening people. Some young men and women could not get into service. You're a veteran. You know what I mean. And then the quota started to slip a little bit, and people slipped through the cracks. And if Bo did slip through the cracks, he did. But it is another log on the fire. Did he wash out of the Coast Guard? And let's say that's true, if he did. So what? What's that have to do with this? Maybe the Army shouldn't have taken him. Maybe he was emotionally unstable. We don't know. But it's just another log on the fire.
It's just another thing that needs to be not tried in the newspapers
Will
and
we
on
have a
the
call?
news.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mo.
Evening, Mo.
How are you?
Is Curly with you? No, I'm just kidding.
Mo, thank you for calling in.
That's the first time I've heard this.
Go ahead, Mo.
I'm just calling in. I've been listening and trying to stay on top of things. And when we talk about POWs coming up in this September, National POW MIA Recognition Day.
Yes.
And Monica has been involved in the past, and hopefully again this year, with the event that goes on at the National POW Museum. It's called The Ride Home.
Yes.
And I just wanted to call and make note of that and talk a little bit, if I could, with you all about National POW MIA Recognition Day. Is that a possibility?
Yes, it is.
We would love to have you talk, Mo. And for those of you who don't know, Mo Moyer is the director of the Ride Home, has been since its inception. And we've asked him to call in because I'm waiting, like you, to hear the latest scoop about what we're going to be doing at the Ride Home this year, which is the third weekend in September, National POW MIA weekend. Go ahead, Mo.
Excellent. Yeah, we're looking to make an appearance. We'll be in there early on Wednesday, probably. I think that's the 17th, and the actual event and services and everything start on Friday, the 19th, and then also on Saturday. This year, when we talk about prisoners of war, we're hoping everything is going well. We're looking to pay tribute to the longest-held American soldier who was a POW, and that's Colonel Jimmy Thompson.
Yes.
Who was held in Vietnam. That was just 10 days short of 9 years total time. And a vast majority of that, I'm sure that you on the station know, the vast majority of that was held in isolation. He spent almost 5 years straight up isolated in a single small cell. Most of the time he was spent in positions where he even couldn't stretch out. But he passed away, and his life was difficult, to say the least, for him when he returned. We're talking about the struggles of a POW here on the air. Jim was, I guess, I don't know if there's such a thing as typical, but Jim was a gentleman who did struggle. He was, when he went off to war to Vietnam, he had a wife and family, and when he was captured, it was, for whatever reason, information didn't get through, and it was quite a period of time before the wife was aware that he was alive. They weren't sure his status, and unfortunately, the family was in the process of moving on, and the world didn't know that Jim was a POW for a long time, because I'm told through government contacts that the family did not want the world to know that because of their situation. And so when Jimmy came home in '73, it was a very difficult road for him for the rest of his life. He did stay in the military for quite some time, but trying to reunite with his family, trying to bring his world back together, put things back as they were, and obviously it's difficult to go back, to say
Yes,
the
sir.
least. But
Well, Mo, we are very, very appreciative of all the work you do, you and Monica, and everybody with the Ride Home, and all of the POW MIAs and their families, because, as we mentioned many times on the show before, when people serve overseas and they're lost, and when they serve and they're not lost, everything is in the imagination of the loved ones at home. They have it probably twice as hard. And so the work you do is heartening for these men and these women.
Absolutely. It's very difficult for me to even comprehend being in the status. I can think of many wives that we've had the opportunity, Monica and I have had the opportunity to meet and to visit with at length. One comes to mind, Mrs. Ben Purcell. Imagining the distraught, no different than Mrs. Thompson. 3 or 4 years before she was even aware of the fact that Colonel Ben was actually still alive. And it's hard to comprehend the strength that they must have to get through that. It's amazing.
Well, Mo, we often take for granted the beauty of America and the freedoms we have. And as we said before, the title of this show, Lessons of Vietnam, one of the lessons of Vietnam is to stop and appreciate what happens when men and women leave the United States and go to a foreign land to fight for freedom. Then you go to D.C. and you walk by the wall and you see 58,000 men and women that had no tomorrows, that you and I have had lives to live, and theirs were cut short.
Yes.
As we said many times before, the work you do, Monica does, the POW MIA issue, is alive and well, and will be for a long, long time. Mr. Dixon.
Mo, this is Bill Dixon. I just we were talking about Jim Thompson. From what I understand, his wife had him declared dead, and when he came home, she was actually living with another soldier.
She wanted him declared dead, right? She wouldn't let it, no publication, and she had moved from the base where they were at when he deployed, and had moved in with another soldier, a sergeant, I believe it is.
Yeah, and you mentioned. Yes, you mentioned that not many people knew about it. There was no news or very little published or come out about Colonel Thompson. In fact, I have talked to a lot of Vietnam veterans who did not know that he was the longest held prisoner of war. They always thought it was somebody else. So,
Mr. Alvarez, you're
yes,
right, absolutely
Alvarez,
correct. Mr. Alvarez, another tremendous gentleman, flyboy who was caught, and he was a few months short as far as time goes, length of captivity.
Very
but he was the one, when you look it up for a long time, Google it and everything else, he was the one that always got the credit.
Yes.
And then we had Mr. Bill Robinson, who is still the longest held enlisted man. But Colonel Thompson, because of all the situation at home, never got to publication because Mrs. Thompson, from the government's own lips there to ours, she would not allow anything to be publicized. The fact that he was being held, and then even when he came home, nothing was publicized.
Thank you,
It took
Bob.
a long time.
we've had one wife on, Bill Schuete's wife, who was very instrumental with working with Norman Gaddis's wife as far as getting the League of Families and Stockdale's wife. They were very strong and continued fighting for all the information and the POW issues from day one. And talking with Bill Schuete's wife, she was quite a strong lady, and just the fact that she stuck with him all that period of time. Norman Gaddis's wife did not know if he was alive or dead until 3 years later. She received a letter in the mail from the Red Cross from him saying that he was still alive. But she stuck right with him and kept the family going while it was going. And those two men have went on with very productive lives, where Colonel Thompson, it was just basically destroyed by his POW status.
Sure. Well,
Yes,
no.
it was. It's the irony of the situation, how it affects some people to the left and some people to the right. And Colonel Thompson just, unfortunately, it took him to the right, and he could not recover.
Monica?
It was a difficult ride all the way to the end. And we have now, through the National Park and through some help with the Mitchell Center up in Pensacola, that's an organization that works through the Navy that is tracking the medical status of all former prisoners of war. We've actually been able to get and install a memorial marker for Colonel Thompson. When he did pass, a few of his POW friends they found out about it through the Mitchell Center, and they were able to go down to Key West, and they were the ones that actually took his remains to sea and scattered his ashes. So the family itself, the children, we have invited them, and we are reaching out to all the Special Forces unit, because Colonel Thompson was a Special Forces fellow, and very, very active in the SEER program and everything else. And so we're inviting all the Special Forces leaders and also the Special Forces Association to come help us pay tribute to a great American hero on Friday, 19 September 2014. And
Thank you, Mo.
we extend that invitation to all of you there at the studio. We'd love to have you come down and help us tell the world. Yes,
You
ma'am.
know, speaking of Special Forces, we need to get Nick Rowe's family invited down to the ride home
Oh,
this
yes, we
year.
do.
Nick Rowe was one of the founding members of NCVVI, and he wrote the book 5 Years to Freedom.
Yes.
And
yes.
as Mo's mentioned, the school called the Sears
Right.
School.
He was instrumental in starting the Sears
Yes,
School
he
in
was.
Fayetteville. His family lives right here near us. We've met his son,
Alex.
and maybe we need to get their address and get them invited down to the ride home as well. We'll have a Special
Let's do
Forces
that.
reunion this year.
Very good point, Monica.
Yes,
Very
let's do
good point.
that. Let's do that. Please,
And,
I hope we can.
I just want to talk to you just a moment about the ride home and what importance it is to the former POWs. We touched a little bit on the fact that our Korean and World War II POWs did not get a good welcome home when they came home. They were told by their families, it's in the past, put it in the past, don't talk about it. Now as they're aging, they'll tell you, I need to talk about it, I need to talk about it. And one of my favorite little Korean POWs that at the hotel that I host, Dallas, he will tell you. He said to me one day, he says, you know what? He says, where were you guys 20 years ago? If
That's it.
Yeah.
Monica.
If the ride home had been here 20 years ago, my PTSD wouldn't be as bad as it is.
Well, what you just said is interesting because we're very quick to say, let it go, move on with your life, put it behind you.
Right.
I happened to be at a function today, and I ran into a Vietnam veteran, and he said to me, the normal greeting to a Vietnam veteran, when were you there? And I simply said, last night. And he looked over and he said, me too. Don't be too quick to say, get on with your life, what's for lunch. It's time to pause and give these men and women a chance to air their differences and understand what they've been through and why this country is as great as it is because of people like them. We can have the freedoms we do have today.
Absolutely.
That's
Just what you're saying. Whether it be Korean, World War II, Battle of Bulge, Mr. Kuhn will be there again this year celebrating his 95th birthday. Sorry, Battle of Bulge, I apologize. Bataan Death March.
He's Bataan Death March.
Celebrating his
There you
95th
go.
birthday with us. And his son will tell you, was just like the rest of them. It was all inside. And then something about being in that environment with other fellow POWs, cross generations, other veterans, and it just comes streaming out. I mean, it's
Wonderful.
the tears flow on both sides of the
Sure.
table,
Sure.
and it brings chill bumps just thinking about it. The conversations.
Well,
that
Monica,
go down.
can you
We're
give us
talking about the
a
history
little...
of being there just the other day. Don Denny, Korean POW, is similar to like the others every day. Every
Monica,
day.
can you give us a little insight into Bedford?
Just difficult, to say the least.
Right. And just so y'all know, the ride home will be the third weekend in September this year, the 17th, 18th, 19th. Please come. You do not have to be a member of any group. Just please come honor these former POWs, Andersonville, Georgia. And you can go to www.theridehome.com for information on the activities from the weekend.
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent.
We also do accept donations in the form of sponsorships. You can sponsor a POW and family member to the ride home for the sum of $350 again this year, Mo?
$350 takes care of a complete couple. That would be a POW honored guest and their guests, and that takes care of their room, their meals, their transportation, everything while they're in town, everything for them, all the awards and everything.
And the ride home is a C3 charity, and it is a tax write-off. So we hope we will see a bunch of
when
you
you go on our
there.
website that Monica mentioned, there is the forms there as far as the donate and everything else. You can do that and fill it out right there. Or if you want to sign up for the dinner, the Big Heroes Dinner on Friday night there in the town of Americus in Georgia with all the POWs, a registration form is there also for that, and you can check it out. All the hotels that are in the area are also on the list. You can find out where you can stay, and so you can be a part of it. We escort them. We take them from downtown Americus out to the National POW Museum, a gorgeous place to go. If you've never been there, it's very moving. The display itself, it is Washington D.C. mall type material. It is a beautiful museum.
It is
in honor of
beautiful.
all former POWs.
I know we're
All of
running
that's
up
on the website.
I'm sorry, Mel. I know we're running up on a short amount of time, but I do have something that I have to say to every soldier that fought in Vietnam, because now I've been there.
You have.
In the 100-degree heat, in the 100-degree humidity, walking Marble Mountain, and I have to tell you, I had trouble humping a camera up and down those hills. Our Vietnam veterans were kind of like, here's the bottom, and our Vietnam veterans were right here. Well, they're like way up here now, because I cannot believe you guys were in full gear, humping a pack and ammo and guns and fighting a battle in those conditions. Not only, the heat and the humidity, but my goodness, the jungle and the mountains. Amazing. Thank you.
Out of my moccasins.
Yeah, thank you so much to every veteran, but to the Vietnam veterans, I salute you.
Thank you,
tell
Mike.
you.
And to all of you, we say welcome home. Welcome home.
Yes.
Thank you, Mo.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
Well, Monica, could you give us a few seconds on Bedford?
Oh, it was a beautiful experience. We took 79 World War II veterans from Raleigh, left the Dorton Arena, took them up to Bedford for the night, got to spend the night in the hotel, chit-chatting, hearing all their stories, and they loved telling their stories.
Oh, yeah.
It was just incredible. Got up the next day, went to Bedford for the ceremonies. Well, if you've never seen the D-Day monument in Bedford, Virginia, which the reason it's in Bedford, Virginia, is they lost the most sons in the D-Day invasion. They lost 18 Bedford sons in that invasion.
Yes, they did.
And so it is there. It's south of Richmond, about 2.5 hours north of Raleigh. It's majestic. It has the wall. It has a landing vehicle. It has our soldiers in the water, and pistons are firing water up in the air to simulate bullet fire. There were an amazing amount of veterans there that were at D-Day. We all were like little kids listening to their stories and listening to them. And then we had the honor of escorting them back to Dorton Arena in Raleigh, at least our Raleigh crew. And they said, bring the motorcycles in ahead of the bikes, in front of the buses.
Yeah.
Don't spare the sound. So we didn't. We had a great time, but it was drowned out with all the cheers that these heroes
It was great
received.
on TV. It looked just wonderful.
It was just probably, it's one of those life moments that you will never, ever forget.
Well, Monica, on behalf of Bill Dixon and the show at NCBVI, we'd like to thank you for what you do for the POWs then and now.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I know you've had a rough couple of weeks with the Bo Bergdahl backlash and all that, but it's the story of the nation.
He's our son. We did the right job. We did the right job. We brought him home. We advocated to bring him home.
We have to let it play out and let the young man have his day in court,
Yes.
and then we'll see what happens.
I like to say we did our job. Now let the Army do theirs.
Exactly right. I'd like to thank you for listening tonight to Lessons of Vietnam. We'll see you in a couple weeks. And keep in mind now what I said earlier. When this man gets in front of a microphone, and he will, have your questions ready. Hold off on your judgment. We all have a lesson to learn on this one. And we will.
Amen.
Have a good night. And thank you for tuning in. God bless America.
Thanks for being here, Mo.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. That VidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.